Kentucky lake.
Oh, there we go. There we go.
Didn't quite go the way I'd planned.
Oh, no! God! God! I caught a giant Asian carp in the mouth. How long are you gonna be here?
Wow.
Y'all, I had been looking forward to this tournament since the day it was released to be put on the schedule. So my track record on Kentucky Lake has been really, really good. I fished this tournament 3 years. The first year, I was in the top half of the field. The second year, I took third out of 127. The last year, I won out of 107. And then there's this year. I learned a lot, and I hope that from this video, you all can too. Here are some teaching points that you guys can probably have a couple takeaways from how I was going into this tournament. Number one, it's June. There's a BFL tournament on Saturday, meaning there's going to be another 100 or so boats on the lake. June is usually a famous ledge bite, so I figured the ledges would be getting pounded. However, knowing about the recent issues with the Asian carp, the last few years I've kind of seen a new wave of fish being pushed up shallow. A lot of the bait is not on the ledges like it used to be, at least from not what I've seen. Another thing I always factor in when going to pre-fishing is the generation schedule. So I happened to look at that, and for Saturday and Sunday of the tournament, the TVA was scheduled to not pull any current whatsoever. And typically what that means for a ledge bite, not good. So I spent the majority of my practice looking for shallow fish. I graphed ledges one day, kind of heard some rumblings from people that there really wasn't a ledge bite going on for them, and I graphed the ledges that I knew, didn't see anything either. So knowing the generation schedule, knowing about the BFL tournament, and knowing how the lake's kind of fished the last few years, I put all my eggs into that shallow basket. And let me tell you guys, I had a really good practice. So I was on several different patterns. One really productive kind of junk fishing pattern was I found several creeks that had stake beds in about 4 to 6 foot of water, and I caught at least 2 good fish out of every creek where I could find those stake beds that I ran to. Now, granted, I was having to put in a lot of work to make that happen. I was getting the right bites, I was getting consistent bites, so I was able to produce some pretty good fish doing that, but I was having to cover so much water, and running 5 or 6 creeks a day was going to get exhausting come tournament. Luckily, on Friday, I found an area that was so diverse and had a couple of very special little things about it that made me think that I had a pretty solid plan going into the weekend. So this area had several stretches of riprap, it had pads, it had current, it had areas with cooler water, it had a little spillway area that had a ton of bait right at the mouth, and there were consistent largemouth in that area. So to me, knowing it was kind of a tough bite for a lot of people, that was a no-brainer. So day one of the tournament, that is where I started, and let's go see how that went. So I started on this area where there was some cooler water being pumped into the area. Caught a giant bass there in practice and graphed it, only to find the entire hole was loaded with Asian carp. Loaded. So even loaded so much that I even caught one in the mouth. That's right. That takes talent.
I caught a giant Asian carp in the mouth. Beat that.
wasted about 2 hours there, and I decided to go run the riprap and run an area with deeper stake beds where I caught another good fish in practice. And luckily for me, running a chatterbait right along the riprap, kind of slow rolling it there, was good enough to produce a couple of fish.
Oh, there we go. Get on the boat. Boat flip him. There we go. There's a little another baby fish. Oh. Oh, guy. Oh, no, no, no. Dang. Oh, God, I almost lost him. I almost just lost him. I just got a 12 1/4. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Gotta stay calm.
And after getting a few fish on the card, I decided to head back to that little spillway area where all the bait was and try to fill out my limit and hopefully coal a couple times. You care if I make a couple casts in here? Right, thank you.
Yeah, I've practiced here and I've caught some good ones, so I'm just trying to get 2 more.
Good luck, baby.
Hey, you too. Golly, that one was angry. Skip that 1/2 ounce Texas rig in there.
There were a few other anglers fishing the area. One of them and I communicated beforehand, knowing we both kind of found this spillway. That's the thing I love about our community. We talked about it. We were able to fish side by side and kind of share this area.
Think there's a bunch of white bass down in there?
Oh yeah. Yep, I felt, when this was falling, I felt white bass dipping at it and stuff, hitting it. So there's a little bass chasing. I threw little topwaters in there. I skipped a fluke way up in there, like made some phenomenal casts and they didn't want it.
Which is such a cool thing to be able to do. I'm used to fishing alone, but I've got no problem fishing with somebody, especially when there's that many fish there.
There we go. Got one. Told you I was gonna catch one on here. Oh my gosh, get out of my net.
A good one?
Yep.
Good.
Yep. So that one, I killed it, Jeff, and just let it fall. I mean, I literally just let it fall, killed it. There we go.
There you go.
Well, it's like a 14, but it'll pull my 12.
Oh, man, that's bigger.
Huh?
I'm sorry.
Obviously, as you can see, I was throwing a variety of baits in there, trying to get those fish that were busting to go, and I just couldn't. Some of the times, I think there were whites that were busting, but a few times I saw largemouth, so just a lot of different things going on under there. I was able to put up about 77 inches and was sitting in 22nd going into day 2. The rest of the guys didn't get a limit there. I was the only limit out of that area, so I knew going into day 2, I would have that entire spot to myself. Or so I thought. So thinking I had that little special spillway area to myself, I decided to run down to the riprap and try to get, again, a few bigger bites early within that top water window. And this happened.
Oh, it's a big fish. Oh, God, see it. Oh, no! Oh, it's a giant!
giant fish came off when I fumbled for my net. That was in the first 20 minutes of the day, and it was awful. I usually never react like that, never throw my rod down. Guys and gals, I was so frustrated. I lost some good fish on day one, and I knew I needed every big bite I could get today to kind of put together a good limit and make a run at this thing. So that hurt. Needless to say, I kept plugging, ran the riprap. I had several small fish chase my bait back, wouldn't connect with it. Threw the chatterbait back on, and apparently those big, ugly Kentucky Lake drum.
Come on. Oh.
They just couldn't handle it. I thought my day wasn't gonna get any worse. I lost that big fish. I caught 2 stupid drum. I was like, I need to go to that spillway. I need to sit there, relax, and get my limit. Lo and behold, I start cruising the spillway, and I hear this giant splash. So what the heck was that? I get closer, and there's a commercial fisherman with a massive cast net casting right at the mouth of that hole. Kid you not. Here's how that went.
I'm fishing a tournament. This is like my best spot.
Huh? What are you trying to get?
Bass. All my best fish came from here the other day, and I need them because my other spot wasn't happening. Kind of desperate for them today. I'm in a really good spot to catch a check. I just need to get my 5 fish again. And my other spot was not panning out.
I mean, at this point, all I could do was laugh. The guy was nice enough to let me make a couple casts there when he took his cigarette break. You know, part of me was just hoping that he could go to the other side of that spillway, the side that I couldn't get to, and that he could go and make casts there. But he's got a job to do. He didn't, you know, at the end of the day, I'm just trying to fish a tournament and catch some fish, but he's got mouths to feed. I can't fault the guy there for not leaving. It definitely started to frazzle me a little bit though.
About 6 pounds.
Bass?
Yeah, that cast net.
How long are you going to be here?
A while. I get enough bait to 10 lines. More hours anyway.
I mean, I might just have to sit here and wait.
So I was pretty frazzled. I had to get away from there. He actually caught 2 largemouth in the cast net.
Here's one too.
Bass?
Yep. Follow.
Salt on the open wound. So I picked up a black and blue finesse jig and started to go to work on that riprap. Actually ended up catching a couple fish doing this. Small fish, but they were bites. My first 2 fish of the day doing that. So from there, guys, I just kind of I knew that I just had to junk fish.
All right, so now I have to figure out how to get bit here. Nobody else did good here. 2 of my bites are done. Completely done. I gotta figure something out. This stuff right here is what makes you a better angler. If you gotta figure something else out.
I ran to the stake beds, ended up missing 2 or 3 good bites with the chatterbait along the stake beds. It was just one of those things. Was not my day. I ended up running a couple areas where I ended up picking up my 3rd fish right there on the chatterbait, another small one, but all I really needed was a limit at this. About the last half an hour of the day, I go back to that bridge only to find the cast net guy was gone and there were 2 bank fishermen sitting there. They were kind enough to allow me to kind of fish around their lines and try to pick up another bite. That was just kind of tough to maneuver. So again, I ended up going back to the riprap, fishing a wacky rig, picking up my 4th fish with hardly any time to go.
I got one. I see one more now. Thank you.
Pretty good under there.
Yeah, I can hear them.
So I ended up 1 fish shy of the limit, dropping me down to 34th place out of the 129. And it was kind of a heartbreaker. I felt pretty good going into the tournament. Thought I had a good game plan, but that just tells you sometimes the absolute unthinkable can happen and your best spots are no longer available. That's just part of the fishing game. That's when it really forces you to adapt, to kind of have multiple backup plans and get really good at trash fishing. Hindsight, kind of going back and watching this film, something that I could have done, maybe even both days, was spend a little bit more time on that riprap. I caught fish there both days, and instead of running around and kind of junk fishing areas that I wasn't that confident in, I think if I would have sat there along that riprap with that current moving through, I probably could have put 5 together. That's something that I kind of made a mental note of, and that's when we have a bad tournament, we have to kind of force ourselves to look at those things and say, gosh, what could I have done differently? How could I have got that 5th fish? How should I have packed up, left, moved? We don't really know, but that was a great learning opportunity for me. I hope you guys learned something there. The guys that cashed checks were on really good fish. Actually, the majority of the guys that cashed checks were fishing the same creek. So that tells you anything. Kentucky Lake fish small. One interesting thing, the kayak guys on Saturday, their limits would have beat the top BFL guys. I think most of the BFL guys were fishing ledges. All the kayakers were fishing way in the backs of creeks. So it just shows that there are multiple bites going on at that time. You just gotta find them. So again, y'all, hope you guys learned something. I'm gonna link a lot of the baits that I used on my Omnia page after I do a fishing report for Kentucky Lake. Check that out if you're interested. Otherwise, thank you all so much for watching. I've got La Crosse, Wisconsin next. I won a tournament up there a couple years ago. That Mississippi River style fishing is right up my alley. Let's hope for a good one. No cast netters. Thank you all so much. Have a good one.